Good evening from New York. Breaking news on the television career of Rod Blagojevich in a moment. But before that, this is Tuesday, April 14th, or as they call it on Fox News, Teabag Eve. We do have complete Teabag coverage tonight, but we're going to save it for later. First, in our fifth story, taxes, spending, and the economy. Today, the president gave the country an Economics 101 lesson about how we got here and where we're going, and in very simple terms, understandable even by those teabaggers who kept their mouths shut for 8 years of draining government coffers, only to discover anti-deficit activism in the last 3 months. He explained why the country has to increase spending now.
To begin with, economists on both the left and the right agree that the last thing a government should do in the middle of a recession is to cut back on spending. If every family in America, if every business in America cuts back all at once, then no one is spending any money, which means there are no customers, which means there are more layoffs, which means that the economy gets even worse. That's why the government has to step in and temporarily boost spending in order to stimulate demand. That's exactly what we're doing right now.
That explanation, not a new one, not enough to satisfy insatiable teabaggers nationwide who claim to represent widespread dissatisfaction with government tax policy and stimulus spending. Fox News mouthpieces echoing that claim, reporting as fact that Americans overall are upset with high taxes and rising up against Mr. Obama's stimulus package. Despite claiming neutrality on those policies and the teabag movement itself, Fox has whipped up excitement for the parties, recruiting viewers to come out, guaranteeing huge outdoor gatherings, spilling into the streets, choking off traffic with all their teabagging. Nor is Fox alone. Republican talking heads like former House Speaker Newt Gingrich have pushed their own vision of teabagging down the throats of the original teabaggers, who were in fact libertarian supporters of Ron Paul. Cincinnati teabaggers down in the mouth about taxes got a Boehner endorsement from the House Minority Leader. And the nation's teabagging, of course, impossible without this man, a Dick Armey at the head of it. The former House Majority Leader representing right-wing moneybags who have blown wads of cash to make the movement look as if it's coming from the bottom up and not the top down. In fact, a new poll finds that Americans are less upset about taxes than they have been for years. A majority of Americans saying they pay a fair amount or too little for only the second time in 52 years, suggesting that if enough counter-protesters rear their head tomorrow, if things get too testy, teabagging might just blow up in Fox's face. With us now, MSNBC political analyst Richard Wolff. Good evening. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for calling the guy with the accent to talk about the tea. That's very kind of you.
That's the only thing that wasn't intentional in the last 5 minutes. Who is this supposed to impress, Richard? I mean, this supposed grassroots element here, it doesn't hold up to scrutiny. The Atlanta TeaParty.net here is not only a domain registered in Washington state, but it openly names sponsors including Gingrich's Americans for Prosperity and Army's group Freedom Works. What agenda are the teabaggers serving, even if they don't know it?
Well, obviously there's grassroots envy here. The Republicans have been looking for years at what the Democrats have been doing, what progressives have been doing online, and saying we want some of that. The problem is grassroots movements have to come, sorry, but they have to come from the grassroots. And corporations running these kinds of things or using intermediaries to do this kind of thing never works. It looks surreptitious, it's secretive, which is precisely the opposite of what these open grassroots movements are. Now, the other piece of this, the other agenda, there's nothing wrong with having an ideological bent to this stuff. You know, there is a real debate for this 10% of the country that seems to believe passionately the Obama administration is socialist. That's fine. If they want to do that, they want to go protest, that's okay. But if the Republicans, if conservatives think that Newt Gingrich and Dick Armey are the future of their movement and their party, then what does that make Bobby Jindal? An infant?
What are we going to see tomorrow, Richard? I mean, Fox News can't keep its mouth shut about teabagging. It's claiming all of America is worked up about this. What happens if we don't see millions of people on the streets or at least on TV tomorrow?
Well, deep embarrassment, but I doubt that Fox News will show you the empty scenes on the sides of the camera shot. I mean, this is all about, it's like a roadshow for Fox News. And again, that, people often think Fox News is driven by the ideological, political thing. It is first and foremost a commercial enterprise. And look, again, this movement, if you want to call it that, has helped their ratings, but it's an illusion to think that it moves beyond the hardcore of the party, that 10%, which is never going to get them to take over Congress, never mind the White House again.
Just as a political stunt, and I know this may not have occurred to anybody, but did anybody vet this for, I'm not saying any have been used at this point, but has anybody vetted this for double entendres? I mean, you've got, Dick Armey teabagging the nation. Are we sure Howard Stern is not behind this?
I thought we were talking about Earl Grey tea here.
Thank you.
I mean, the response would be one lump or two. No, I don't think there is. I don't think there is any vetting going on. This is people power, Keith.
We have some tape coming up, in fact, a lot of it, about Fox, as it's denying that it's promoted any of this, actually promoting this, despite that claim of neutrality. But right now, what we've got here is a Fox email that went out that not only celebrates this, but it has very clear non-neutral policy advocacy at the bottom there. No to more taxes. What happens if this turns out to be the farce that many would expect it's likely to be? I mean, the numbers are probably going to be way less than anybody suggests, or at least anybody at Fox has suggested. What happened? I mean, you can't get away with negative feedback, false feedback forever, can you? You can't just take a crowd shot showing 3 guys and saying there were 3 million.
No, you can't, but it does rely on someone outside the Fox News prism showing the full picture. I mean, look, Fox News, all credit to them, they get great numbers for cable news, but that doesn't look like a lot of people. It doesn't look like an Obama rally when you put them all together. And so I think there is a real risk of embarrassment factor for them. Let's hope they show some real muscle, because it would be good for politics.
Richard Wolff of MSNBC bearing with us. Great thanks as always, sir.
Thank you, Keith.
As promised, Fox News teabag promoter. As David Schuster recounted on this NewsHour last night, and great thanks to him, Neil Cavuto of Fox claimed his network's coverage of teabag parties was in line with its coverage of past political rallies, such as the Million Man March, which took place the year before Fox News was created. And you remember how enthusiastically Fox covered those massive anti-war protests in 2003. But last night on the Fox Out of Business network, a guest host named Charles Payne denied Fox had endorsed anything, saying there's a big difference between covering something and promoting it. He then went on in the same program in a scripted tease to say, quote, "Why, it's time to party like it's 1773 next." So we were curious as to whether Fox was endorsing the teabagging, not the supposed opinion people like Glenn Beck or Sean Hannity bag. Of course, we already know how Bill O'Reilly crouches on this issue. No, we wanted to see whether teabagging also had the news programs on Fox News going off half-cocked.
Get ready to tea party.
April 15th, all across the country, citizens are standing up.
Here in D.C., what I'm covering in Lafayette Park, tomorrow morning, 1 million tea bags will be delivered by like 9 a.m.
Fox on top of tea parties, full steam ahead.
Americans outraged over unfair and crippling taxes.
How to get involved in the hundreds of tea party protests.
Not happy with how the government is spending your tax money and taking from you in tax money? You're not alone.
Angry taxpayers are going online and attending tea parties.
How about you? Would you go to one of these tea parties?
You know, it is unlike anything we've ever seen before, at least in recent history.
Hundreds of thousands of outraged Americans may turn out.
We know of at least 500 cities.
Hundreds of towns and cities.
Hundreds of these tea parties.
Now we're talking about 500 cities tomorrow.
We are tracking 760 cities.
Look at all of them. That's where they're expected to be tomorrow.
Now more evidence that they're just getting bigger and bigger.
It's touched a nerve in American
people at a ground, a grassroots level, are fed up.
It is a grassroots movement.
The big question will be whether or not the mainstream media will cover it.
The mainstream media is not reporting on them.
Will the mainstream media cover these tea parties? I think they may be forced to.
I've seen the other networks kind of mention them, but in a mocking way.
Yeah, because they don't understand.
I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore!
Okay, well, people are mad.
A couple of tweets on Twitter. I think this could be the start of a real revolution.
It may end in a revolution.
Taking a stand at the Alamo, citizens revolt against more taxes.
Sean Hannity is getting 8,000 people in Atlanta.
Sean Hannity is going to be in hot Atlanta.
Sean is on the scene with Newt Gingrich, Joe the Plumber,
Rick and Bubba, Mike Huckabee, Neil Bortz, and a special performance by singer John Rich.
Let's take a look at all the hit shows here at Fox that are going to be covering the Tea Parties.
Neil Cavuto, he's live in Sacramento. Glenn Beck in San Antonio.
It's powerful Tea Party coverage.
I'm going to one. Are you going to be at one of these?
I'm covering one.
When these people are going to the tax tea party, and I've said that there's the taxes,
by the way.
Well, I'm just attending.
Well, Fox isn't sponsoring any of this stuff. We're just realizing there are a lot of people across the country who are not happy with.
There's a big difference between covering something and promoting it.
April 15th, as Tea Party sweep the nation on tax day, we're there with total, fair, and balanced network coverage, live.
This administration has changed the direction of the economy towards more government and less private enterprise. That's what's happened, and that's what these people are protesting. And there's nothing wrong with that. It is not a sham, and it is not a fraud. It's now my great duty to promote the Tea Parties. Here we go.
Oh, Stu, what happened to you? As ever, showing both sides, fair and balanced, supporting the teabaggers and sponsoring the teabaggers.